Hello and welcome back to the next one. We are going to look at the estates again. We are going to look at the burghers, the so-called third estate, which is basically the summary of everything which is not clergy or nobility. In this case, the burghers are a little bit of a special role because the burghers are a unique newly class which developed in this time frame, which represents basically rich people which are not nobles. For example, the traders of the Trade Republic here. And they are the separate population type. So we have peasants, residents, nomads, burghers, nobles, and clergy. Burghers are always related to cities. So you can only have burghers if you have residents and you have a city present, which we have here. Based on the infrastructure, we have amenities for urban housing. And then you can build up these kind of traders, which are rich resident population doing trading and other things. Now they are a little bit more simplified here in comparison to the nobility. They don't have privileges yet. They only have two reforms basically, but these two are extremely important in managing your realm. So the nobility is basically handling everything. And the burghers are trying to get a small piece of the cake, which is commerce, so basically everything trade related, but also the urban governance, which means how are cities handled in your realm. Now, if you know history, the Industrial Revolution and everything which came to nowadays is heavily related to cities. So like industrial production is happening in cities, or close to cities, is connected to cities. And the burghers are basically the first step to take cities to the next levels, make their governance independent of either the state or the nobility. And that's exactly what we are looking at here right now. We have two laws or reforms here. One is the commerce, which is basically trade, and the urban governance, which can be either handled by the state or the burghers itself. So if you, for example, go here into the rights and reforms and check it out for the city charters here, which are here, urban governance. So we are on city charters currently. We could move downwards, which would be into a more state-focused governance of cities. So we can do provincial magistracy and municipal bureaucracies, which is basically the nowadays bureaucracy, so that the state has special localized agents which do the governance there. Or we can move more into a burgher-focused approach, which means that cities become independent from nobility, but also slightly independent from the state. So free cities or urban governments, which basically means that they can do whatever they want to. These are the two options you can reform into. Everything has its benefits and drawbacks. If you go into a more burgher-focused approach, you will empower the burghers because they can enrich themselves there, get richer, and make more control from there, which maybe is in your interest because stronger burghers means stronger, weaker nobility and clergy. But it's a drawback, of course, because you also remove power from your state. The commerce reforms are completely independent from that. They basically represent how is trade going on in your realm. How free is your trade? If you, for example, go down in the reforms from right of commerce, you will see that there will be things like legal wilderness, guided exchanges, or state commerce, which basically means that the state has control over everything that is traded. Or if you move more into a free trade economy, then you would go up in the laws, which means commercial law or free commerce, which basically means that the state doesn't say anything about what you want to trade. If you want to trade a chair for whatever food and you want to pay for it, whatever you want to do, you can do it. The state will not say anything. But there's also things like corporate law here, where the state will have a certain kind of saying and get a little bit of income from your trading. But that's also late game, when the bureaucracy is more established. You can empower the burghers by interacting with them again. You can, for example, promote their commerce so they get better in trading. But you can also support their autonomy, which gives them loyalty but gives you a debuff. And you can also leverage them. For example, you can take their property, but you could also get more naval supplies, or you could get more trade power from merchants. We currently only have one, so that's not really useful, but you could. You can also assess their power as usual, so you can see their incomes, their power distribution, and what they own. And of course, as said, they are basically an urban-focused power holder. So they deriving their power mostly from cities and urban properties. So they have a lot here, and they own basically all of the commercial properties. But they can expand into usual things like farmlands if they are rich enough. So for example, in provinces where they are, which is for example Naples here, let me click on it. So we do have burghers here, so they can start buying properties in this province. But in a province where they are not, let's for example take this one here. So we don't have burghers here, population is 0, and we don't have any commerce going on in this province currently. Then the burghers also can't buy stuff here, so they own nothing here. Which means that they are really tied to cities and your development of cities over time. And that's basically the burghers. However, there's something very important to say here. The burghers and their commerce laws are critical for an institution. There is an institution which starts in 1356, which is called commercialization. And one of the requirements here is that your commerce laws are either level 8, 9, or 10. We are... no, wait a second. 7 is also okay. I misread that. Yeah. To spread, 7 is also okay. So 7, 8, or 9 it has to be, so that you have a chance to getting commercialization as an institution. As we can see here, it is spreading outwards. However, if you are not on 7, 8, or 9, or 10, you will not get this reform, this institution. So we really have to reform this one, for which you, for example, need trade ideas if you really want to get up here. It's something you need to consider, because basically outside of Europe, it will be very hard to get commercialization without getting trade ideas first, because the spread speed is extremely slow and depending on the trade incomes in your provinces. So for example, Venice is spreading to Crete, but it will not spread from Crete to the Mamluks here, because they do not have the trade reforms necessary for embracing these institutions. So you really have to pay attention to this and read the requirements for this institution to get to you. And why do I mention this? Because many of the next institutions that you have here, for example, global trade, requires you to have commercialization embraced or present. So if you don't work towards commercialization from the early game, you will have a problem, unless you are in Europe, basically. And that's the key parts about the burghers. In the early game, when you start a run, you really need to consider, for example, what you want to do. Do you want to play along with the burghers? Do you rather want to focus on the nobility? You really have to make some decisions how you want to play. My general recommendation is to keep the nobility loyal in the first years, and then think about what you want to conquer and what you maybe want to do with the provinces you own, for which there will be a later episodes when we dive into the economic perspective of everything, where this kind of decision making comes into play again. Now, as the last episode for estates, we are going to change into tribes, which is the last estate, which is playing a special role because they are not present in Naples. It's something, for example, the hordes have access to, which we will look at as the last one, before we go forward into the chapters about taxations and everything and economic perspectives, which will be the next block of episodes after the tribes. So see you in the next episode, leave a like and see you with the tribes.